Today's lesson is a review of simple, compound, and complex sentences, and it covers CS exercise number 103. The first type of sentence that we'll talk about is a simple sentence. So a simple sentence contains only one independent clause. So there's no dependent clauses in here. It's just an independent clause, which means it has one subject and one predicate. However, both the subject and the predicate could be compound or they could be singular, but it is still just one subject, one predicate, one independent clause. I'll give you a few examples. Our first example is very short. Linda slept. Linda is our subject, slept is our predicate, one independent clause. Our second example is a little bit longer. We waited for you at the corner store. It still has one subject, we. We are the ones that waited, and one predicate, waited for you at the corner store. That simple predicate would be waited. That full predicate would be waited for you at the corner store. One independent clause. Our third example is a little bit longer, and we'll have that compound subject and compound predicate. Mahir and Dylan, so that's our compound subject, packed and carried the customer's groceries to their cars. So packed and carried is that simple compound predicate, but the full predicate is packed and carried their customers' groceries to their cars. So it's not just enough to say a simple sentence is short, because it's not. Linda slept is short, but Mahir and Dylan packed and carried the customers' groceries to their cars is not short. It's about having one independent clause, which means one subject and one predicate, even if they are compound. A compound sentence is a sentence that contains two or more independent clauses. So they both have to be independent clauses. They could be a simple sentence on their own. The first example they give us is, you go to the park and I'll meet you there at 7 o'clock. So you go to the park is one independent clause. I'll meet you there at 7 o'clock, another independent clause, and they are joined with the coordinating conjunction and. Our second example is, he made a terrific bunt, but he was thrown out at first base. So he made a terrific bunt, independent clause. He was thrown out at first base, joined with the coordinating conjunction. The final example they give us is, I like to spend my weekends at the cottage. My brother prefers to stay home. So first independent, I like to spend my weekends at the cottage. My brother prefers to stay home, another independent clause, joined this time with a semicolon. A complex sentence has one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. So our first example could be, we'll lose this game unless we get some hits. We'll lose this game, that's an independent clause. Unless we get some hits is a dependent clause. It couldn't be a sentence on its own. So we have one independent and one dependent clause. The class will begin as soon as the teacher arrives. The class will begin, there's a sentence, as soon as the teacher arrives. It's not a complete sentence on its own, so it is a dependent clause. And our final example, let's hope there's lots of food when we get to the family reunion. So let's hope there's lots of food. Sentence on its own, when we get to the family reunion, dependent clause. Now, the dependent clause doesn't have to always go at the end. We could switch the order of these, right? As soon as the teacher arrives, the class will begin. It would still be a complex sentence, but your dependent clause would be at the beginning. For this assignment, you'll have 13 sentences, and your job is to underline and the independent clause with one underline, 2 lines for the dependent clauses, and then label whether it's simple, complex, or compound. So one of the things I did want to show you is when you're looking at an independent clause, it's okay for it to start with some of those coordinating conjunctions like and or but, maybe or. So those we would not be able to have as a sentence on their own with the and, but it still works. So for this one, we struggled to get the box in the trunk. That's independent. And we were finally successful. So we wouldn't have and in a sentence on its own with this, but you could say we were finally successful. And, but, and or will be the few kind of exceptions where that can still be an independent clause, even though you wouldn't say it on its own. So this is two independent clauses, so this would be a compound sentence, okay? There'll be a Google form attached to the assignment as well for you to label what type of sentence is which, and then the answer key will go up on Monday.